Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. So this is my first video after a while because I was playing a couple of tournaments actually, and I did quite well, so we will talk about that later. But for today's video, I want to analyze a very nice game for you guys from Mikhail Tal. Probably this game is one of his last games of his career, and there's a sad story behind actually this game, I should say, but I will tell you the story. So you cannot find actually this game in chess databases because it's not saved. But Garry Kasparov basically provided these like moves, and this is a game between Mikhail Tal as white and Garry Kasparov as black in a Blitz tournament in Moscow. So as many of you probably know that Mikhail Tal was really sick at the end of his life, and he was in the hospital. But apparently he just kind of escaped from the hospital, and when the doctor entered his room, he didn't see Mikhail Tal over there, and the nurse told him that Mikhail Tal just left the hospital, and then they realized that he went to play in a chess tournament. Yes, you heard me right. So he was in a hospital bed, he didn't feel well at all, but he just ran away and he wanted to play a tournament. So he played in a 8-player tournament. It was a double round robin. And this game I want to show you today is against Garry Kasparov. So let's see what happened in this game. Okay, in this game, as you can see, Mikhail Tal is playing as white and black is Garry Kasparov. So two world champions basically. This was a blitz game, so it was a fast game. I assume it was a 5-minute game, but I'm not sure exactly. It might be 3 minutes 2 seconds or just 5 minutes flat. Okay, so white started with e4, black played c5, Sicilian defense. So from now we know that we have a sharp opening. White continued with knight f3, black played d6, so it seems that black wants to go for Najdorf variation in Sicilian defense, which is one of the most popular and I would say more challenging, the most challenging opening in chess. So here Mikhail Tal played bishop b5, which is possible, but the main line here is to push the pawn to d4. So Tal played bishop b5 check, and Kasparov played knight d7. Notice that in this position, black has a couple of options to block the bishop. Black can play knight c6, knight d7, or bishop d7. All of these options are theory and completely playable. I will show you a couple of moves so you also get familiar with the ideas in this position. So let's say if black plays knight c6, then white can castle short, and black plays bishop d7, white can play rook e1. So this is a typical idea, and the point is when we play rook e1, we clear this square for our bishop. So after, let's say if black plays a6, we can even move our bishop back to f1. And the reason we don't want to exchange this bishop for this knight in this particular position is that we usually want to keep our bishop pair, so we don't want to lose our bishop pair because bishop pair is usually an advantage in chess, so we don't want to lose it, right? Anyway, so let's say black plays knight f6 here, and then you can play c3, which is an important move. The reason behind this move is to support the pawn to d4. So white's idea is to push the pawn to d4 to control the center and get a central pawn structure. And let's say if black plays a6 in this position, white can simply move the bishop back, and let's say black goes bishop g4, white can push the pawn, black can take, and we have a completely playable position for both sides. But let's go back and let's look at the other move. So after bishop b5, remember I told you we have 3 moves here, right? So let's say black plays bishop d7 here. If black plays bishop d7, you guys, if you prefer this position as white, you can take the bishop, knight takes, and then you can castle. And now I'm going to show you a quick game of Mikhail Tal against Miles in Riga 1979. So this game continued with knight f6, queen e2, e6, b3. Obviously white wants to fianchetto the bishop, bishop e7, bishop b2, castle, d4, cd4, knight takes d4, queen c7. Notice that most of the times in Sicilian defense, the queen belongs to c7. So this move is kind of, typical here. And then white plays c4. So after c4, white gains more space, and it's much easier to play as white in such positions. Although black is also okay. I'm not saying that black is worse here, but white is more comfortable. Why? Because white has more space. So black played a6, knight c3, rook f e8, f4. I'm going to just show you the game quickly. I mean this game, which is not the main game I want to show you, to just get familiar with the ideas. I mean f4 is another idea in Sicilian defense, that you can push your pawn in front of the rook, and the point is you want to control this square. You want to play f5 or e5 depending what black does. So black played queen c5, pinning the knight on d4. White played knight a4, attacking the queen, and the queen has to move. So the queen moved to h5. The idea is to exchange the queens. And another thing for you guys is that in Sicilian defense, the endgames are usually better for black. So that's why here black played queen h5. Why? Because black wants to exchange the queens. Black wants to go to an endgame. So white took the queen. You might ask, why did white take the queen, right? Because if we, let's say, move our queen to d2, black can simply take this pawn on e4. Or let's say if we move the queen to d3, then this queen is really good on h5, because they can even try to help each other with the knight to checkmate the king, or black can play rook a b8 with the idea b5. So black has some ideas here. That's why here Tal took the queen, he exchanged the queens, and after that he played f5, bishop f6. Black is attacking the knight is protected, so we are fine. We can just take the pawn, f takes e6, rook a d1, knight c5, g4. g4 is an interesting move because it seems that the knight on h5 got trapped, right? But black has a solution here. Look at this, guys. Knight takes a4, b takes a4, and then the bishop takes on d4. So why we want to exchange our bishop to this knight? Because we want to clear that square for our knight. So the knight wants to retreat to f6. So bishop takes d4. Bishop takes d4, e5 first to attack here. If we move the bishop, it depends where we move. If he goes here, we can play knight f6, attacking both pawns. And if we move here, I believe we can go here, but even knight f4 is an interesting option here. Okay, so in this position, after e5, white took the knight, black took the bishop, and rook takes d4. So this game is about equal, but Mikhail Tal managed to win the game at the end in this rook end game. Now let's go back to the real game. Okay, in the real game here, black played knight d7. Kasparov decided to block the bishop with the knight. So after knight d7 here, white pushed the pawn to d4, knight f6, castle, a6, the bishop is under attack, bishop takes d7, knight takes d7. Why not bishop takes d7? Because if the bishop takes d7, white can push the pawn to e5. And now the knight on f6 is a little bit, tricky here. Because let's say if he takes, we can just take, and the knight on f6 is under attack. And let's say if he goes, he can't move to d5 because of the queen. And if he goes here, I believe we can just move the queen here and attack the knight. And it's not that easy to protect that knight. And white has a slightly better position here. Okay, let's go back and see what happens after knight takes d7, which was the real game. So after knight takes d7, white played knight c3, Kasparov played e6, Tal played bishop g5, queen c7, the queen was under attack, and then white played rook e1. So these are typical moves. Why? Because you want to get your pieces out as quickly as possible. It's a blitz game, you don't have that much time. So basically you're just playing with your hands, not that much with your brain. My point is, you usually want to just move. You don't want to calculate that much in blitz games, because otherwise you can find the best moves, but you're going to get in time trouble, and at the end you might just lose the game because you're in time pressure, right? Okay, so rook e1, c takes d4, knight takes d4, knight e5, f4, which is a typical move for someone like Mikhail Tal, an aggressive player, a brilliant player, a tactical player. What can I say? So he wants to attack, right? So white wants to attack. White wants to open up the center. Why? Because the black king is in the center, and we usually want to open up the files against the king. Why? Because then we can attack the king easier, right? So black played h6. Black is also attacking the bishop. The reason black played h6 here is that, let's say if black moves the knight to g6 to protect the knight, we can play f5, and if he takes, we can, we have many moves here. We can play e takes f5, which is a simple way to continue, and we are checking the king and attacking the knight at the same time. And if he blocks, we have this nice square on d5. This is a nice outpost. And look at the black pieces. They haven't moved yet, right? So white has an advantage here. White is clearly better. As you can see, the evaluation bar is very high. So it means that white is +5. It means white has 5-point advantage here. Okay. So let's get back to the game, because after f4, black didn't move the knight. Instead, he pushed the pawn to h6 and he went for a counterattack. And you know that counterattack is the best defense in chess. So whenever your pieces are under attack, you usually want to look at some ways to go for a counterattack. So here, white played bishop h4, black played g5. This is also typical. It's a little bit scary because you're pushing the pawn. The pawn is not that protected because he's being attacked by 2 pieces, but it's just being protected by 1 piece, right? But this is typical. And the reason is, if we take this pawn, now this knight has a perfect square on e5. Nobody can attack the knight. Okay, the bishop can, but the pawns cannot. So the knight can stay there forever. And now black can play bishop e7, taking advantage of this pin and this unprotected bishop. So it means that the pawn cannot move, because if the pawn moves, we can simply take the bishop. And now our idea is to take the pawn g5. So black's position is totally fine here. And I would say, actually, I prefer to play as black here. So let's go back to the game, because in the game, obviously, Mikhail Tal found the right move. He took the knight on e5. Black took the bishop on h4. He took on d6. Bishop took on d6. And then he played knight d5. Yes, guys, knight d5, a beautiful move. Even though this move is not correct, But in a blitz game, sometimes you can play such moves because it's really difficult for your opponent to solve his problems in a short amount of time. So I think here Mikhail Tal had the same thought. So he played knight e5, although there was another game that here white played e5, and after bishop takes e5, white played knight d5. And here the best move for black is to play queen d6. But let's say if black takes the pawn, now the difference is that this bishop is pinned, so we can move our queen to h5 and we can attack the bishop on e5, and at the same time we are pinning the pawn on f7, so he can't push the pawn to protect the bishop. So it means we're gonna win the bishop on the next move, and this position is totally winning for white. The best move here for black is to play queen d6, but after queen d6 we can play knight f3, we can attack the bishop, take on d5, we can take on e5, bishop e6, queen d4, castle long, queen takes h4, and this position is about equal. White is a little bit more comfortable here, I would say, because white's knight is a little bit better than the bishop, and white's pawn structure is better and healthier. So let's go back to the game because Mikhail Tal played knight e5. This is a nice move, and the idea is that white wants to open up this file against the king. Mikhail Tal was an attacking player, right? So he wanted to attack the king, and yeah, basically at any cost, right? So that is a nice move, although as I said before, it's not the best way to play here, but I think this was more about the time factor that is usually the case in blitz games. So knight e5, black took the knight, he took back, and then Kasparov played here king f8 because the king was in check. That was a discovery check, right? So king f8, and Mikhail Tal played queen f3. So unfortunately we don't have any other moves in this position. So these moves that I showed you, basically Garry Kasparov gave these moves basically to the people like fans and so on, and he said okay, in the game he lost on time although he had a winning position, and apparently Tal could basically create some problems for him and he couldn't play very fast, so he lost on time even though he had a winning position. So at the end, Mikhail Tal finished third in this 8-player tournament. Actually, the tournament was a very strong field, so that was an amazing result for Mikhail Tal, who was really sick, and even like doctors were shocked that he just ran away. I mean, his situation was very difficult. But anyway, he could play this tournament, and what can I say? He loved chess, so he wanted to just try, another tournament and try to play a good chess and win another tournament. But anyway, he finished third after Garry Kasparov and Boriev, who was another great chess player. And after a few months, actually, unfortunately, he passed away in June 1992, I believe. This game was played in 1992. And yeah, we lost a very good player, a great player, tactical player, and a lot of even like strong chess players nowadays, they basically get their ideas and patterns from Mikhail Tal's games. So I hope you guys enjoyed this game, and if you like these players, or if you like this opening, or if you have any suggestions for my next video, please let me know in comment section, and I will do my best to create a new video for you guys that you will enjoy. And thank you very much for watching. I will see you soon. Take care.